The following is a special presentation of the Decibel Geek Podcast.
Hey, this is Anthony Porter.
And this is Patrick Francis.
You're watching Decibel Geek TV.
This is Walter Egan, and you're watching Decibel Geek TV.
Hey everybody, this is Gunnar Nelson from Nelson, and you're watching Decibel Geek TV. Don't tune out.
You are a magnet, and I am steel. Washes away the truth to brick our road.
And Tora, frontman Anthony Porter. Okay. Next up, the man behind one of the most enduring hits of the late 70s, Magnet and Steel. This is Walter Egan. All right. After that, if you don't recognize his beautiful blonde flowing locks, then you weren't paying attention. One half of the great rock band Nelson, this is Gunnar Nelson. And last but not least, this is a man who's basically a jack of all trades. He's written with a ton of people, worked on a ton of things. His biggest hit, so to speak, might be Celine Dion's Where Does My Heart Beat Now? That's Robert White Johnson. When you're writing a song, do you believe that the bones of that song, do you think that this is a hard rock song? This is a song that makes sense for me and my band? Or do you think a song, if you believe in it, or you think it's good enough, could be a part of any genre, anywhere? Does that make sense? And I hope everyone can talk into the microphones and stuff so we can get it recorded.
Just for me personally, it kind of comes from a different place every time. The things that inspire you, you want to emulate that. And as you started out in the beginning writing, you were just trying to, figure out how to function.
Really? What does that mean? Explain that.
Just your skills. For me personally, my family was very musical. We're from down in the Delta of Mississippi. They listen to a lot of blues and gospel and country. And when I came out saying, I was a rock and roll heavy metal singer, that was a big conversation I had with my family. They were like Southern Baptists.
Oh, really?
And but I was super inspired by my family with this songwriting, and they listened to Mississippi John Hurt a lot, which was a blues guy that was from down in that area. My grandfather was friends with him, and he had this really unique guitar picking style that my uncle and aunts would play, and they made it look really simple. And then as I got older and started messing around with the guitar, I was like, man, this is pretty. You have to have a pretty good skill set to pull it off. But as far as songwriting, I remember just when I first started playing, just sitting on the edge of my bed, like strumming these chords, and it ended up becoming a song that was popular in Memphis, on the region thing. And I think I felt like it was a Tora thing. Did that answer your question? I'm not sure if I answered
I'm sorry, I was being distracted. You guys are getting a lot of feedback. Is this okay? More closer over here. I was trying to give you guys the stage. Audience feedback. Yeah, audience feedback. By the way, we'll try and do a Q&A if we have time in a little while, so if you guys have some questions you want to ask, feel free. Walter, I'm curious about you. You've written some big songs, and like I said, not that big. Like I said, I'm curious what it feels like for somebody to watch something that begins with the germ of an idea. Maybe like I said, you're sitting on your bed, you strum a couple chords, and you think, they'll sound good together, right? And then it builds from there, and you think, I can maybe write some lyrics to this. What's it like when you're sort of shepherding an idea from the nugget of the idea to something that we hear on the radio?
Well, you can take that in the bigger picture. I got my first guitar when I was 15, and I was bold enough to think I could teach myself to play, so I had some songbooks, Kingston Trio songbooks to show me the chords. But when it came down to starting to learn scales, I would veer off and thought, well, I think I start writing songs for some reason.
Yeah.
And I was most inspired to write a song when I heard the Shangri-La's Leader of the Pack. And I thought, well, here's something I could do. I think I could write a song like that. And so I endeavored to do that. And I was lucky enough in high school to have a good friend who was also following the same steps up the ladder. I'd write a song I played for him, and I'd get some feedback right away, and he'd write one, and I would give him the same feedback. And we've continued to play until this day. Actually, we're still in a band called Malibu's together. We're opening for Mickey Dolenz next month in California. But as far as the germ of an idea, you have to allow yourself to believe that this is the greatest thing ever written, and this is going to be the most wonderful song that the world has ever known. If only for that night that you're strumming those same C, F, and G chords and going, oh man, yeah, I think this could really be interesting. And then the next morning, maybe you could judge it in a more sober light. But as far as Magnet and Steel goes, I had been signed to Columbia Records to do a 6-album deal. And my first album was produced by Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks as Buckingham Nicks. And so Stevie was participating in, as mostly doing background vocals, but vocally arranging things. And I think it was her idea to do the doo-wop background kind of thing on Magnet and Steel. But the night that I was inspired to finish the song Magnet and Steel, I had been working on bringing a 50s sort of feel to a song. And that's the thing, as a songwriter, you mentioned genres, and I think that as a songwriter, you can write in any genre you want. And you should be able to do that, and in fact, it's more fun to be able to do that, even to the extent of moving to Nashville and thinking you could write country songs. I mean, it's one of the things I did, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But that's my country thing. Actually goes back to Graham Parsons, which I guess we can answer in a different question. But
sure.
Anyway, so Stevie was singing backgrounds. I was driving home. I lived in Pomona, and we were recording at Sound City, now famous from the film. And on the 101 freeway, a car pulled in front of me, what we called a pimp mobile in those days. Yes. It had a diamond window, had neon lights underneath it, it had the little fringes around it. And then I noticed the license plate said "Not Shy," and I thought, well, there's an interesting concept. And I thoughts filled with Stevie, and by the time I got home, I had basically written I'm not sure the Magnet part of it just came out of the blue, but yeah. And then so that was my first album, and it showed up on my second album, and I had Stevie join in the background singing on that, along with Lindsey and a lady named Annie McClune. And it was magical, I guess. At the time, it just felt good. But for a compilation that was released a few years ago, I did an a cappella mix of it, and I was amazed to remember that the voices weren't even doubled on that. It was just okay. Let's stand around this mic and do these vocals. And at the end of it, I think Stevie goes, well, if that wasn't good enough, we'll do it again.
Well, so Gunnar, obviously you're probably sick to death of talking about your dad, but let's put it kind of unique. Okay, good. So in your case, obviously, your dad, Ricky, legendary songwriter, you, I'm sure, grow up watching what he's doing, and it's influencing you. Your music's very different than your dad's. What's the division between talent versus passion or drive? I mean, it obviously came to you, genetically. Did you feel like even from a young age, like this is what I was meant to do?
Well,
It's in
absolutely.
blood.
My first memory, actually my first conscious memory, was watching my father perform. I was sitting on an apple crate side stage at Knott's Berry Farm. They had a theater there called the Good Times Theater, right, with the water curtain and the whole thing. And I'm a kid from the 70s. By the way, my dad loved Megan Thee Stallion. We actually talked about that song in particular.
If I don't want to interrupt, but one of the thrills in my life is when I was compared to your dad in one of the reviews of my record. I thought that's just
You guys,
What's better?
Do you guys know each other?
I met him at Sound City.
Oh, okay.
Just briefly.
By the way, Sound City was a dump, but it sounded great.
Really?
It sounded great.
I think
this
Dave
wasn't
Grohl's
some box,
documentary yeah.
But great Neve console. Anyways, yeah, my first memory was actually watching my father perform, and I made that connection, and I kind of went, this is great. I mean, he's happy, and the audience is happy, and this is the greatest job in the world, and I want to do that.
Yeah.
And what's cool about growing up in a house like that, you know, his music, he had two phases of his career that were really distinctly different. But in the early years, when he was Ricky, he had professional songwriters writing his material for him that he translated. And boy, I mean, out in California, everybody was doing their thing at Sun Records in Memphis, but he was working a television show 5 days a week, and so he couldn't travel. I got to talk to Sam Phillips at Sun Records about a month before he died. He said, you know, we tried to get your dad on the label, but Ozzy was too smart for us. It wasn't going to happen. Mm-hmm. But we kind of always regarded him as kind of our adopted kid brother.
Cool.
You know? And they all got along really well. But what that served to do is all those guys from Gene Vincent, Eddie Cochran, and Ricky Nelson out in California were making viable rock and roll, but it was very different than what they were doing in the South. They weren't coming from the blues. They were coming from more of that whole pop folk thing and that country thing. And much like everything happened out of the Troubadour years later, it was a scene, and it was really different. I grew up in that. I grew up in the second phase of my dad's life when he was putting the Stone Canyon Band together in the pool house down the hall.
Yep.
And you know, it's amazing to me because it's just great social proof. You know, I think a lot of kids who want to make music from the time they're really young, it's kind of a pie in the sky thing for them because they have to use a lot of imagination. For me, it was like coming from a family of plumbers who just wanted to plumb.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it was always around, and it was great social proof that it was possible.
Yeah.
But my dad's music was always different from his father's music. Our grandparents, actually Ozzy and Harriet, were in a big band. And they had a #1 of their own in 1935 with that stuff. Our dad had his #1s. He had Traveling Man and Poor Little Fool. And then we had ours. So it's the only family in history with 3 generations of #1 hits.
Incredible.
But very different styles of music.
Right.
Our grandpa Ozzy was always a writer. Our father wasn't a writer again in the beginning. But I had this great gift from him when I was growing up and started to play. I started playing when I was 6. And I remember those early conversations where he realized I wasn't going to quit. He'd go on the road and stuff, and they finally bought me a drum set because I was persistent, driving his drummer crazy. And he'd come off the road, and I was still out there in the hayloft above the barn doing my thing. And then he realized when my brother and I actually wanted to do this, he said, learn from my career. Because there's one or two things I got to tell you. One, keep your sense of humor, because in this business you're going to need it.
Yeah.
And as the years went on, of course, I really started to learn what he meant.
Sure.
And then the second thing was, he said, you know, also learn from me and realize that I would give away all of the #1s that I've had that other people wrote for just one more garden party, which went to #5.
Yeah.
Because that was a part of him. So he said, if you're going to do this, you know, please realize that you can go to any town and find someone who looks better than you, plays better than you, sings better than you, but if you write a song from your gut that connects with people, they're going to come to you for the rest of your life with that, because it becomes a soundtrack to their lives.
Right.
It was the greatest advice. So my brother and I started out writing from the time we were kids. And when all the other kids in junior high and high school were playing cover tunes, we weren't. We were playing horrible originals. But over time and repetition, you know, and influences, you hopefully get better at what you're doing.
Okay.
And everything's really kind of changed. We wrote our first Nelson record as a collaboration. It was my brother Matthew and a writer named Mark Tanner.
I'm going to ask you about him.
And myself, and that was really more of a collaborative thing. But I was a kid. I was 18. I didn't
Really? Is that all you were?
Yeah, our dad had just died, and so we started working on that record. we kind of went back to the drawing board. I was a drummer for at that point it was 12 years, and I taught myself how to play guitar. Over that year that we started writing that album, and our dad had just died. I was kind of reeling from that. I didn't really know what else to do, and so I did what millions of other teenage kids have done, and I just kind of like descended into music and guitar playing.
Right.
And learned that. That's all I did. I had the guitar in my hand 10 hours a day, and wrote that first record and stuff. But now I'm collaborating less and less.
Okay.
As I find myself getting older and more selfish.
Okay. Collaborating is the second half of this conversation. I want to come back to that in a minute. Now, Robert, so I created a list here, and you can correct me. Some of the people you've worked with. Let's read off some names. There's Peter Wolf from the Jay Giles Band. There's Y&T, which this room will probably appreciate. There's the big hit with Celine Dion. There's a local, kind of a semi-legendary songwriter named Taylor Rhodes that I think some of you have interacted with. Yep. You've interacted with some people I've had on my show, namely Max Carl and Henry Gross. Tell me about what it's like collaborating with, and I'm going to assume some of these people had big personalities. Tell me what it's like collaborating with someone with a big personality.
That's a good question. I was very fortunate when I started out. I started out as a drummer and a lead singer. I didn't know any better. That's what I did. But as I grew up, I learned how to taught myself. Again, I play guitar and rhythm, But the band really taught me how to get along with people. It's a collaborative sort of thing, and that's what I was really used to. That was my environment when I grew up, and so I was able to do that with like Peter Wolf. Peter had come off the success with the Jay Giles Band, and Peter is probably one of the most eccentric people that I've ever worked with in my life. I can say that I honestly love the guy. He's very difficult. I shouldn't say difficult. He's very demanding, but just a true artist. I learned an awful lot from him. But then I go to work. I work with him, and then maybe the next month or whatever, I'd be working with Carl Wilson of the Beach Boys, and he did day and night as far as personality. Carl was one of the most sweetest and humble, giving guys and laid back guys in the world, very nurturing and stuff. Where Peter was, just very, very. He had a ton of energy, and it was just trying to find how to capture that and direct it in the right way. But for the most part, again, the song with Celine, which Taylor and I wrote, I've written quite a few songs like that an artist would do, like a one-off sort of thing. But in my career, most of the time it was like with the Van Zandts, with Johnny, his solo record, the Brothers, or Skinner, the 38, or whatever. I found myself really at home in those type of environments, in a band sort of situation.
Okay. So you've covered all different kinds of genres, and you're okay. Now, the reason I ask this is because I've heard it described in some ways as like a blind date. Like you and Peter Wolf will say, or whatever, you're going to meet in a room and you're going to, like a couple of dogs, kind of sniff each other out, and like, let's see how we feel about each other, and then you open up a little bit and play a couple chords, and he opens up a little bit and he sings a little, whatever. Is it kind of like that? What's it like?
It was a little different. My publisher was in New York, and he knew somebody very close to Peter. And actually, Taylor and I we were working on a Hall & Oates on steroids sort of. We were actually kind of working towards a deal for ourselves.
Okay.
We just get along really well, and so my publisher happened to play Peter's guy a few things that we've been working on, and he played it for Peter, and Peter freaked out. It was like he came to town, and so I picked him up at the airport, and we went out and sat in the parking lot at a Hill's food store not far from Music Row until 3 o'clock in the morning, playing songs. you know, and he started thinking, I want to do this one, I want to do that one, and the next thing we knew, the next year and a half of our life was Peter Wolf, literally, writing songs and producing.
I just want to emphasize these points, anyone who's listening. If you're a true music lover, imagine sitting in the driver's seat of your car and Peter Wolf is in the passenger seat, and you guys are listening to music that you're both jointly working on, deciding, yeah, I like that, I don't like that. Just imagine Peter Wolf sitting in your car. You know what I mean? And what's interesting is all these guys have stories like that. I just think that's fascinating. Anthony, I want to come back to you. Now, this is something that I cover a lot on my podcast, is sort of the transitions into the times when things get a little lean. There's a really hot moment when things are good, and there's some lean period too. Back at the strip club. Gunnar at the strip club. Cinnamon. That's his stripper name. So I want to know, do you feel like in those moments when, because let's be honest, a lot of people sit in their bedrooms and write songs. You four had an outlet to get those songs out into the world and get a chance for people to listen to them, vote with their wallets. You had a moment, Some of you you're still having moments. Those moments have gotten bigger or smaller over the years. When you're coming up on sort of the lean period, do you feel like do your creative juices take a break as well? Do you ever feel sort of stifled, like, man, I'm still full of great ideas, and I don't have an outlet to get those ideas in front of people. I know they would love them if they heard them. Have you ever experienced that feeling?
Definitely. With the Tora guys, we owe everything to a guy named Jon Lamoreaux that ran Art Studios. He was kind of like a father figure of our band, and he was the guy that took us in his office and drew a pie on the wall and put one little tiny sliver in it and said, okay, this is you and this is everybody else. It's going to be getting in. And of course we were ready to sign up right away. We were like, can we go play our original songs and play it in front of people and really share it? Your creative side never goes away. You do get frustrated, things happen, and what you're talking about, you're high on the mountaintop one minute, and then you're kind of in the scary dark valley, the next minute. But you need that outlet as a creative person. But I've definitely been there where, you feel like you have lost your voice. They mentioned a minute ago about having a big corporate will behind you. When you go from being on a major label to all of a sudden the phone stops ringing and your record's getting shelved, it's kind of a scary moment in your life. You're questioning, what you're doing. And I kind of went home. When that happened to me, it was really weird. We had kind of done some really heavy, dark kind of material, and I think it was just us transitioning with how music was changing. We were kind of still trying to be our band and be true to ourselves, but we could kind of feel that looming cloud over us that it could possibly end. And we always had a great time together. We never took it for granted. We couldn't believe we were getting signed and getting to go do music for them. And so we just wanted to make the most of it. And but when it started to go away, I kind of got a phone call from a guy out in LA, and he said, "Man, it's not a question if your record's going to come out. It's not going to come out. It's going to get shelved." I was having a heart attack. I was at home in Memphis, and I spent a bunch of time on Beale Street when I was at home, and I got to know a lot of the singers and local musicians and stuff. And there was one guy named James Dovan, and he was about as big around as a green bean. But he could sing like Otis Redding and Al Green, and he always had chicks around him all the time. He was smoking a Salem cigarette, having a shot of something. And I just looked up to him. I just loved his voice, everything about him. And I went and found him the day that I got the phone call. I got in my Jeep and drove downtown and went to find him. And of course he was sitting there, in a booth with a bunch of chicks hanging out around him. And he was older than me, and I kind of looked up to him, and I went in and I said, "Hey man, I got some serious news. I don't think my record's going to come out. And, I'm kind of having a hard time with this. I don't know what I'm going to do." And I said, "What do you think? What am I going to do, man?" And he said, "You're going to keep singing. You're a singer, man. You're going to just," he kind of just gave me this, a moment of clarity for a minute where he just kind of patted me on the back. And I guess he had been through the waves a few times. He had had record deals. and toured all over the world. And he was at home, he was playing with a band in Memphis. And at that moment, it just made me feel comfortable with the situation. And I just wanted to strip myself away from everything that I had done. And I wanted to be a blues singer. All of a sudden, I just said, man, I'm just going to get my acoustic, and I'm going to put it in my car, and I'm freaking going to play every hole in the wall in the world, and I'm going to go play some more John Hurt. And, you know, I realized real fast why they call it the blues, and I started getting paid on that gig. So I kind of started thinking maybe I better call it something else. But I don't know, I was inspired, and I think in the music industry, you get raked over the coals a lot. And I talk to young kids. I kind of had that culture ingrained in me because of my mentors that I had that were there that kind of supported me, that they were a springboard. You know, I could go in and whatever kind of crazy idea I was coming up with, whatever they were doing, they would take 10 or 15 minutes out of their time just to sit down and kind of walk me through it. And I wanted to be that for other people. And, you know, you get beat up, you get knocked around, but a lot of times I'll tell people just to close their eyes and I'll play them some music, like from my background that John heard, or you know, something off Kiss Destroyer, or something off Physical Graffiti, or something that really just moved me as a person. And I tell them to think about their situation, how the music spoke to them. And I say, I want you to hold on to that fire, that passion, that feeling that you have, because you're going to need it, because you're going to get beat up. And it's the truth. But you never let go of that feeling. I mean, I feel the same way. I'm as crazy about music, and I love it. I'm a fan of it, and I need it as part of my life as much as I did the minute I sat down and started thinking I could put something together. I mean, I'm thinking about it getting chill bumps. It's just, I don't know, it just had such a profound effect on my life. I mean, it's just a part of who I am. And it's definitely, back to your question, it's very, very scary and dark when you feel like you don't have that voice, but it never goes away. It's always there, and your outlet is there, and you actually want to get better. It kind of starts, that fire starts getting in you, and you're like, man, you know what, I'm fixing to go kick the crap out of this thing. You know, you kind of change your attitude. Right?
The first album comes out in 1990, 4 top 40 hits. I think you sell 2.5 million copies of that. 5 million copies of After the Rain. Yeah, Gunner's not counting. And then it's a 5-year gap before the next album comes out.
Oh, a lot more happened in a 5-year gap.
Well, that's what I mean. You know, talking about a faucet of opportunity being shut off. What do you do?
Well, I mean, we were in a pretty unique situation. We actually were on the label and we were out on tour at the time, enjoying the success of the record. The same label that realized they could actually save tons of money by signing records that were already finished by a small label called Sub Pop out of Seattle. And David Geffen, in all of his wisdom, decided to sign Nirvana on our label. And so it was actually the single largest paradigm shift in music industry history, and that includes the death of disco, both of which were completely engineered by the industry. None of it was organic. All basically, with the death of disco, the 5 or 6 guys that really ran the industry, and by the way, that really are, it's kind of scary, but it's true. They all got together and said, man, Donna Summer wants to charge us $1 million per record, and that's in 1970s money. You know, so they said, well, you know, I heard about this new movement out of England, and you give these guys a dime bag and a fifth of Jack, and they'll do whatever you want. They're doing something called punk, and it doesn't cost anything. So that was that revolution.
Sure.
But think about it. I mean, there wasn't a person in America that didn't own the Bee Gees record from Saturday Night Fever. And like the next week, it seemed people were burning albums.
Sure.
Same thing happened to us. Nelson was out there, the last real confidence rock band of that era, and we went from Living on a Prayer to Smells Like Teen Spirit overnight.
Yeah.
And I mean, you knew it wasn't organic when, you know, gosh, on a Wednesday, MTV's playing all of the music that a lot of us in here love. And then on Thursday, The Gap was carrying nothing but flannel, and they weren't playing any of it. I mean, it really was engineered. There was a lot of good music that came from that, but for me, I couldn't relate to it as a human being, because what my personal message has always been, including through my songs, has been a message of positivity. I never felt like anybody owed me. You know, I come from a family where we've all been treated as guilty until proven innocent for some weird reason.
Yeah.
And everybody thought that, you know, we had trust funds and leg ups and stuff. Our father was, I mean, he was really misjudged and really underrated unfairly when he was alive because he was just freaking beautiful.
Right.
And he was on a TV show, but it's important to note after he did Rio Bravo, he actually had a very conscious decision to make as to whether or not to go down the road of being a film actor. He was a fine film actor, and it's an easier life, or be a musician. And this is a guy who lived and died for rock and roll. He was playing 300 shows up until the day he died. And he loved music. He happened to be, he was a musician who happened to be able to be an actor.
Right.
Not an actor who happened to make music.
Sure.
And I got to watch that growing up, and I thought, man, that kind of sucks. That's unfair. And when my brother and I came out, I mean, shoot, man, a couple things were lined up. There's a reason why we imaged ourselves the way we did. There was a lot of traffic out there. And we figured, man, someone's zipping through MTV, which was the biggest radio station in the world at the time. You know, a kid's going to give you a second and a half maybe before they go on, unless you catch their attention.
Yeah.
So our whole motto was, love us or hate us, you're going to know who we are. And we did that. But unfortunately, the year before, the whole Milli Vanilli scandal had happened.
Yeah.
So they see Matthew and Gunnar Nelson coming along, everybody thinks it's Milli Vanilli.
Yeah.
And we had to go
Those guys can't, they're too pretty to be as talented as
it's
they are.
packaged and it's the record company, whatever they thought.
Sure.
So Matthew and I did what we always have done. 2 acoustic guitars and all the priority 3 radio stations. Then all the P2s and then all the P1s. We worked our way up. We actually went to radio stations and performed live for them on air for about a year and a half before the record even came out. And we had to do that.
Yeah.
So when we did drop the record, the program directors weren't gonna just shit can it. They were actually listening to it. And this was great. We knocked it out of the park. And you know, getting that call from that manager was great. You know, you're the #1 band on planet Earth this week. I was like, man, that's awesome. And my first thought was, shit, now what?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I've been focused on it for so long.
Right.
That I really have been guilty of not really enjoying the ride.
Sure.
And then when the whole Nirvana thing happened, it was really interesting going from being a hero, becoming a zero from a hero overnight through no fault of your own.
Sure.
But it kind of felt like the reverse of, you know, slogging it out in clubs like Madame Wong's West and Chinatown and the Central and playing your way up the LA club scene and trying to get that break. And then going and doing one spot on MTV like my brother and I did, and all of a sudden we were closing down shopping malls. But we were the same guys that we were before.
Right.
It can leave just as easily, but to your question, you know, the most important thing when you actually go through this, my father had a great statement that I love. A career is nothing more than a series of comebacks.
Wow, that's profound.
And he would know that. And life is really that way too. Your reason why you do what you do, no matter what it is you do. I mean, we just happen to be songwriters. Our reason why we do what we do is stronger than money, it's stronger than fame, it's stronger than fan approval, friend approval.
Sure.
It's something that we have to do.
Yeah.
And unless you have something in your life, again, no matter what it is, drives you.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what a single day would feel like without not having a song wanting to come out of me and wanting to do that.
Yeah.
You know, I drive my poor wife crazy. I'm constantly late for things, but she'll find me in a corner sitting there humming an idea into my iPhone. And it has really nothing to do with whether or not people are going to hear it. A record company's going to get behind it. It's just something that's a part of me and a part of the other fellows on this dais here.
Okay.
It's not what we do. It's just who we are.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing that separates the music industry from any other business. The bean counters don't get it.
Right.
That's why they're able to strip mine in someone's life in a second with a phone call. Guess what? They're not going to have any record. It's like, shit, that's my life. Not only is it my life, it's been my life my whole life.
Sure.
And to you, it's a financial decision. To me, it's my call.
Yeah.
But it's in those moments that you do what you've always done. You pick up your guitar and you take those feelings, you know, hopefully write a song that's going to connect with people. Or maybe not, but it's going to make you feel better and it's cheaper than a shrink.
Sure. Fascinating. Okay, Walter, my question for you, Gunnar alluded to this sort of jumping or crossing genres. The reason I wanted to ask you this question in particular is that your first 4 albums come out in that Southern California singer-songwriter sort of vibe. made with Stevie and Lindsay during the height of Rumors and all this kind of stuff. And then I believe it's your 5th album, which I've been talking to a lot of people here. I think we're all fans of the Wild Exhibitions album. Yes. It's been really interesting when I've been telling people, a lot of people brought that's the copy, that's the album they brought for you to sign. I love it. It's a wonderful power pop record. And granted, this is the period when people like Elvis Costello and Greg Kinn and the Knack are starting to kind of rule the roost. You mentioned moving to Nashville to be a part of the country music scene. Was this a conscious decision of you to think, new wave and power pop is happening. I need to pivot and adjust, or else I'm going to be left behind.
I suppose subconsciously you do think about that while you're in the flow of the trend of the world. But I don't remember specifically trying to tailor it as anything but more songs that I've written along the way.
Good.
And what Gunnar said was true. I mean, writing songs is something that a songwriter just has to do. I started when I was 16 when I started writing songs, and it's never stopped. You're always seeing the world as, there's a song, or you're feeling something. During my divorce years, my wife used to complain that, we should go to therapy. Why don't you want to go to therapy? It's like, because I'm dealing with this stuff constantly writing songs. And there's that movie Walk Hard, which is kind of like the Johnny Cash version of Spinal Tap.
Sure.
But the best part of it is he comes off the road, and every time he comes off the road, his wife has another baby in her arms, and they're having an argument, and then you can see him look off to the side, and she goes, "Don't you be writing no song while you're arguing with me." And that's so funny to me because it's something that actually does happen. But as far as I don't feel like that Wild Exhibitions was much of a leap from what I had.
Well, that's interesting. That's what I wanted to know.
Perception has a lot to do with things too.
Okay.
After doing my first 2 albums with Lindsay and Stevie, the regime in charge at Columbia changed, and the guy named Don Ellis, who was the A&R man who signed me there, had come. My 3rd album's called Hi-Fi, and we recorded it in a house. We rented a Stevens 16-track machine. We put it in actually the house that Stevie had just moved out of in the Hollywood Hills, and did it very much DIY. And Don Ellis came in and said, this is great. This is just what you need. We don't want it to be too slick these days. It's like, a little bit more organic, whatever. And then he was gone by the time the record was released, and this guy named Jack Crago was in charge. And I had a meeting with him, and he goes, I don't hear Stevie and Lindsay on this record. And, you signed me, you didn't sign them. And that was why I planted the seeds of getting off Columbia. And the album that you referred to, Wild Exhibitions, was on Tom Petty's label, Backstreet Records. And Danny Bramson was the president of that label. And he and I had a mission for one another. He had a mission to prove he could make a record succeed that wasn't a Tom Petty record. And I had a mission to prove that I wasn't just a crooner, that I was a rocker. And I had this song called Full Moon Fire, which was the single from that record. I came up with this idea for the video that we were able to do. In writing the song, I felt like I was getting in touch with the part of me that comes out in the middle of the night, which I equated to a werewolf. And so it's kind of discovering the werewolf in our souls, the dark side of our soul that we don't necessarily pay attention to. And in the video, I pick up my wife, we go to a movie, and at the movie I turn into a werewolf and run amok through the Los Feliz area of Hollywood, and then come back and turn back into a werewolf. And 8 months later, Michael Jackson came out with Thriller. So, I'm not saying that he stole my video.
I think that is exactly what you're saying, Walter.
If you look at those two, you'll see there is a correlation. Of course, I can't dance like Michael could, but he had a lot more money to spend on this video.
No kidding.
But I think as far as jumping genres, the biggest jump in many ways was when Graham Parsons joined the Byrds and turned to psychedelic rock band into a country rock band. And at that time, which was like 1968, the most radical thing that a rocker could do would be to really embrace country music without a tongue in your cheek. You know, the Beatles, of course, had Ringo singing some country songs, but it was a radical change at the time, and not a lot of people were ready for it. Flying Burrito Brothers was his band after that, and that sort of really set the template for what is now called Americana or country rock or alt country or whatever title they have for it. And another one of these fortunate stories of mine is that I was good friends with Emmylou Harris, who had been playing in the Georgetown area where my band was playing in 1970, 71, I guess it might have been. And Chris Hillman discovered her and told Graham, if you want to sing with a beautiful singer, come see Emmylou.
Yeah.
And the night that he came, I was there. It was a club called Clyde's in Georgetown. And I think Graham got up and sang I Saw the Light, and Emmy sang a little harmony on it. But after the set, they were talking and said, well, you know, we really need a place where we can try out our voices. And I said, well, my kitchen is just up the street. Come up to my house. So the next day, Graham Parsons and Emmylou sang for the first time in my kitchen. And I was the person there. And of course, today, if we had those phones that we have today in those days, this would be a major motion picture probably by now. But at that point, it's just my memory, and it was quite a thrill to... And Graham, in many ways, was my last idol as far as someone I looked up to in ways that were slightly unrealistic. And so when I met him, and that day he was amazingly sweet, amazingly profound, I guess, in a lot of ways. I asked him, who should I listen to get into country or whatever. But, and then I got to see the darker side of him when they were out on tour promoting that record, the Grievous Angel record. But you know, I had started writing Hearts on Fire with a little bit of tongue-in-cheek.
Really?
Yeah, well, I was referenced to Heartburn and things like that.
Oh, yeah, okay.
My good friend and collaborator, Tom Geider, who was the bass player in my band at that point, and he said, I think this could be a real song. Why don't we make it a little bit more serious? And
walk away from the acid reflux idea.
So it was a real thrill for me that Graham liked it enough to want to record it on that album. And in fact, when they did that, after the sessions, Emmylou came back to town and had a set of lyrics that Graham had written that he wanted me to write the music to. So I feel like I have the last Graham Parsons song in this song called Carolina Calypso that I did write the music to just about a week before he died.
Fascinating.
Yeah, so it was pretty crazy.
Sir, in these situations, I mean, someone like Anthony writes a song that in his mind is sort of maybe a blues song, or, you know, Gunnar's working on something on an acoustic guitar, but you take that to a producer and suddenly it becomes something different. Now, anyone who doesn't know, I gotta put in a plug. Robert was the frontman for this unfortunately short-lived rock band in the early 80s called RPM. And they only put out 2 albums, and the second one is called Phonogenic. And it's one of my favorites. And it was produced at SARM Studios, which is Trevor Horn's studio. Trevor Horn of around the same time. Yes, 90125. ABC, The Lexicon of Love, Grace Jones, which is why I'm wearing a Grace Jones t-shirt. The Buggles, exactly, yeah. Video Killed the Radio Star. So here's a producer with a very specific point of view. And at the time, his sound, his point of view, is super hot. And that's who Robert's working with. So tell me, but you have a different opinion about this. The producer is not always the one who's shaping the sound of these songs. What's been your experience with the producers? Well, when we were talking a minute ago, I was saying that a song is sometimes just bones. You've got the bones of the song, and then maybe the producer is in charge of making it what it is, but you disagreed with me.
I think if you... Yeah, I think nowadays, maybe for nowadays, but for a long time, I think, you know, a way that I would always approach something, and most of my co-writers, whatever, we would just try to spell it all out. You know, this is what's in our heart, what's in our head, and we had a good degree of success with that. I think you can't really assume that everybody's going to, like, get it. everybody's going to be able to play I'm working with a young girl right now from New Jersey. It was like a blonde Amy Winehouse. I mean, she's just like unreal, right? And so we sit down with the acoustic guitar or whatever, but if I were to be producing, I'm working on a production thing with her, but if I were to be pitching her a song to another producer, I would probably spend a good bit of time to carve it out as to what my vision of the song was, and not leave it to chance,
Yeah, and weren't you telling me earlier to get the demo as tight as it can possibly be so that there's not a lot of guessing when it comes to the producer. The producer takes the demo as like the guide. This is what we have in mind for the song.
Right.
Yeah.
There have been some times where I've been really pleasantly surprised, like for instance, like the song that Taylor and I wrote for YMT, Don't Be Afraid of the Dark, and Kevin Beamish produced that, and Kevin did, just an amazing job. There are other times where we've gotten songs back. Actually, I was producing Peter. We were in the studio in Nashville, and my publisher had sent the mix of Where Does Martin Now with Celine. And so, obviously there's a lot of anticipation, and we're getting at, this is the first, big release from their first American, English-speaking record is going to be big, and of course, being in the music business as long as we had at that time, we're already going like, oh yeah, right, we've heard that before 1,000 times, right? And so we put, and it was a cassette at the time, we put the cassette in the studio and listened to it, and I can see Peter, and he's like, and he just looked at me and shook my hand and said, congratulations, But that was something that we worked on a demo for quite a while, and Chris Neal, who produced Celine on that hit, later became a good friend of mine, and I'm working with him. He took our ideas and just embellished them and took them to another level, sort of thing. But all the basic ideas, instead, it was all laid out there. Background vocals, even I produced the vocal on the girl that sang it, and Celine copped, literally, she probably would never do this now, but at the time she copped every ad-lib on the record that I had worked with the singer on, and producing the demo and stuff. So that, in my mind, edified, that reinforced the fact, like, hey, do it upright. And there's certain people that, if I have a relationship with and I know them and they know me and we work together, and I can give them a piano vocal demo or something rough guitar. But generally speaking, and even more so nowadays, it's you've got to really spell it out.
I think we're already almost out of time, which I had a feeling would happen. I've got like 20 more questions for each of you. 7 minutes. Okay. What I want to do, and if you guys will commit to trying to be brief about it, I want to hear your tastiest memory. To bring a little bit of what I do on the hustle into this, I assume all four of you can make a living as musicians at this point. I mean, some of you have written some pretty big hits that probably keep the mailbox money coming along, but no? Gunnar, you shake your head?
The industry's changed in the last 10 years, brother.
Yeah.
I mean, 10 years ago, we would give away the live shows to sell the records. The horses left the barn, the music's free.
Yeah.
So now we give away the records, and we have been just to do the shows. It's all about live performance now.
Yeah.
And it's about going out and doing shows, and that's how the majority of us make our living. But it's actually kind of cool, because the one thing that's different from being a songwriter, producer, who's stuck in the studio all the time, and I love that part of the process, I really do. But there's nothing like getting out on a stage and singing a song and having people singing the words back to you that you've written. It's just this connection. That's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's cool. I mean, everybody up here also loves to perform, and you got to go out there and do that. I know a lot of writers here in town. Some really good friends of mine. Gary Burr, for example, has written more country #1s than most people in town. Incredibly talented writer, better singer than most of the people who cut his tunes. it came to the point where he just said, look, the mailbox money is just not coming anymore. And so he put together a band, and he's out on a tour called Blue Sky Riders. They're out on tour with Kenny Loggins.
Yeah,
and that's why.
That's your friend.
Yeah.
With Georgia, what's her name?
With Georgia, his wife, Georgia Middleman, who's amazing. They're
interesting.
They're absolutely brilliant. But I mean, that was their inspiration for going back out on the road. I mean, necessity's the mother of invention.
Sure.
They needed to pay the bills.
Yeah.
And the industry has changed. I actually, man, I mean, the people that I did business with were better at stealing money than I'll ever get at finding money. So,
what a mess.
I mean, we were one of those cliches. We really were. You can go out and you can sell millions of records and still be broke, according to the accountant. And that's just the way it is. But what I did was, instead, when the whole Nirvana thing happened, I started my own label. And this is when people weren't really doing that a lot. And I always kept my business cards whenever I went international and met, Watanabe-san from MCA and stuff like that. We went out to get some food. I always kept his card. So when Geffen did their thing, they changed their direction and wished us off into the cornfield. They basically put us in the studio forever. It would have been embarrassing had they let us go to another label that was still doing our kind of music.
Right.
And had we had a hit, so they basically just kind of kept us recording on records they never intended to really release. And unfortunately, you were right. You point out 4 years had gone by. It wasn't for our lack of trying. John Calaga was going through that phase where he was sending Aerosmith back to record whole records, and that was just the thing. So, anyways, we put our own label together, and I called those same people on those business cards and said, well, you obviously licensed the records from Geffen.
Sure.
How about doing it direct with us? And that's what kept us fed for 10 years.
Wow.
Just going out and doing that. You hustle. You do what you have to do.
You hustle. That's the name of my podcast. Speaking of which, I want to invite Anthony and Gunnar, since these two have already been on. Hopefully at some point I can honor you guys by having you as guests on my show too, to kind of get deeper into your... I'll take you to dinner if you need. Whatever you want. But yeah, I'd love to have you guys on sometimes so we can go deep on your individual story. Tell me your tastiest memory, Anthony. And we got to be quick about it.
This is really hard.
I can't believe that happened to me a moment.
I think it was hearing our music on the radio. The first time there was a DJ in Memphis, Malcolm Riker, who had a local song show, and the guitar player and I were cutting grass for a living. My mom was a real estate agent, so we were doing that. And we were like, wouldn't it be crazy if our song got on the radio? And the DJ actually started playing it for us, and we couldn't believe it. I mean, it was just the first time hearing something that you've worked on and put a lot of yourself into. That was pretty amazing.
That's amazing. Cool. Walter.
I think I probably gave you one of them or a few of them already.
I remember.
But my friend Fred Perry, who I worked with in the Brooklyn Cowboys, it's Richard Perry's brother, he came up with this wonderful saying about show business. It's the 4 stages of showbiz. Walter who? Get me Walter. Get me someone just like Walter. Walter who? Thank you. Rest my case.
I love that story. Gunnar, tastiest memory that I can't believe that happened to me moment.
My wife is sitting in the audience. Okay, 8 girls in a hot tub after selling out the Salt Palace in Salt Lake City.
I'm from Salt Lake City. They were probably all Mormon girls.
That was it. That was my I can retire moment.
Oh my gosh. I had Johnny Vatos, the drummer of Oingo Boingo, on, who are still huge in Salt Lake City, and he tells me Mormon girls are the best to party with. You would never know. Gunnar can
my wife's
confirm this. Not Mormon anymore? Yeah, okay, I get it. All right, fine. If I get you on my show, I have questions for you. Robert.
I don't know if you see it's not funny, but we're just how everything kind of converges really quickly. I was writing with Donnie Van Zandt for 38 Special on her project. We got a writer's block. I'm down in Jacksonville. So I said, let's just go out and take a drive. So we get in this car, we're driving around. I didn't know where the hell we were going. And next thing you know, we're back in the woods. We're near this lake, and he pulls over. And we get out, and there's this house. It's all grown over with weeds and vines and stuff, and it's just trashed. And I said, "What's this?" He says, "Well, this is Ronnie Van Zant's, his brother Ronnie's last home, right? He had sold it to Robert Nick's, I believe, my rhythm section, and they'd taken it back, and it was just trash. But anyway, we were leaving there, and again, we had this writer's block, and as we're pulling out of the driveway, I see the road sign, and the road sign said Brickyard Road. And I told Donnie, I said, there's our idea, right? Well, and so anyway, we shared that with Johnny, and then we got together not long after that and wrote Brickyard Road. It was a big record for Johnny. And so just how, just all those things come together at one time.
Well, I hope everyone got something out of this. I think it's fascinating. These are four very talented people who have some amazing things happen in their life. And I hope they never forget that we care about them and we love them and what they do matters to us. So thank you guys, and thanks everybody for listening.